Now, I'll be honest, I don't feel particularly qualified to tell you what makes one aspect of a game's design good and another one bad. I'm honestly not so good at breaking down the game into a series of interconnected systems and pieces. However, I can detail some aspects of the game design process that I actually just find plain difficult. The biggest one that I tend to run into is overthinking what fun actually is. Now, fun is really subjective, and it comes from a lot of different aspects of a game. Everything from the graphics to the fundamental core gameplay play a role. I can piece out some things that are pretty fundamentally fun for nearly every fan of video games, say score numbers going up or really vibrant and tactile impacts. The issue comes in where other components are only fun if they're pulled off carefully, such as collecting items or exploring. Now, exploring is only going to be fun if your game looks good, and varied enough to make it pay off. And collecting items is only fun if each item is varied or otherwise interesting enough to make it worth the player's time. Now, these two examples both come down to variety and preventing things from getting too stale. For instance, don't make two snowballs which are both slightly different shades of blue, maybe make a snowball and an icicle. And also, the player should have some kind of investment or confidence that the game won't waste their time by showing them a snowball, an icicle, and then 50 more types of snowball. I suppose that this would come potentially under marketing to some degree. Building up the player's expectations that they'll have a good time is probably going to heavily influence their experience. So we've established that the player generally has to be given or promised some variety in order for the game to be fun. I'm kind of discounting the "but I had fun grinding" mechanism because I'm not sure that's even the same process as what we generally think of as fun. Sure, it's gripping and compelling, but it doesn't afford the same feeling of excitement, stimulation, and accomplishment that a really fun video game can. Even if you have had fun with grinding, I feel confident that it's supplemented by a fun game mechanic which is doing the legwork. Anyway, I would argue another big component of fun is making the game responsive and presenting as much tactile feedback as possible. By tactile feedback, I do not mean that your game should only be playable via haptic feedback pads, although that is a wonderful idea. I'm referring more towards making the player feel as integrated into the game environment as possible. Now, this can be done via a nice atmosphere that the player's imagination takes them into, or by touching the lizard brain in all the right places to get a good reaction out of it. The lizard brain one is what a lot of people think of when they hear the term game feel or game juice. What game feel is effectively doing is translating things that happen to the player character into things that the real-life player's real-life brain can intuitively understand and react to just as quickly. Now, examples of this are screen shape, colors and silhouettes being clear and meaning specific things. Even increasing the number of enemies but reducing their health still serves to trick the lizard brain into thinking that you're actually an unstoppable, powerful killing machine. Now, maybe I am or maybe I'm not, but in general I feel like I'm pretty good at making the small, subtle game feel changes on things like this. The problems that I tend to run into are the more meta fun things. I find it considerably harder to discern what upgrades are fun to unlock and use, and whether an upgrade system is necessary or a completely superfluous feature. These are the kinds of things that trip me up constantly. Is it actually bad, or is it just boring because I've become so tremendously familiar with it, thus removing one of the core components of fun as I described above, specifically the bit about variety? The only fixes I can think of for this kind of numbing effect to a gameplay mechanic are: 1. Remove it from the game temporarily and add it back in a few weeks later. This one isn't great since it takes a lot of time, and even then it might not be good enough. Number 2. Get people to playtest the shit out of your game. Now, this one is much better, and everything I've just described is probably a big reason why people recommend this one so much. Your objective when getting people to playtest is not to get people to enjoy your game and tell their friends. It's almost the exact opposite. You need to hear the dirt on your game because chances are you're numb to whatever weird mechanics you've implemented after so many tireless weeks of work. So, in conclusion, what makes game design hard? Well, I guess the answer would be not being able to self-induce amnesia and play your game fresh every time. The real solution is, of course, to only work on your game when you're blackout drunk, so that you don't remember anything about the game at any given point in time. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more pretty meandering weird videos that go a bit all over the place, but it came to a pretty coherent conclusion, so I'm happy with it. Goodbye. Alright, so because I can't remember to self-promote to save my life, I have to add this bit on the end separately, so feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment. Do all that stuff that's good for the YouTube algorithms and by extension me. Also, I have a Patreon, so you can get beta copies of Warp Tech for only $1 a month if you so desire. The link to that is, of course, in the description, you complete an absolute gremlin, people.